The galaxy had long forgotten the truth about humanity. For centuries, the records spoke of them as nothing more than a minor species, useful in some ways, adaptable, but ultimately unremarkable. They were traders, explorers, diplomats, and workers, scattered across the stars without any real influence in the grander scheme of things. The larger empires saw them as insignificant, a species that could be ignored, tolerated, or, if necessary, controlled. But hidden deep within the archives of an ancient and forgotten civilization, there was a story, one that had been buried for so long that even its keepers no longer understood its meaning. It was a record of war, of conquest, and of terror, and at its heart, there was a name written in a language almost lost to time. Humans. It was the Sci-Fi scholars who first stumbled upon the ruins of the archive world. They were an old species known for their dedication to knowledge, their obsession with history, and their fear of conflict. The Sci-Fi had lived long enough to know that some truths were better left undiscovered, but curiosity was a force more powerful than fear. When they decrypted the ancient records, their world changed forever. The writings spoke of a war that had nearly consumed the galaxy, one fought against an enemy so fearsome that even the strongest empires of that time had fallen before them. The descriptions were unsettling: armies that never surrendered, soldiers who fought with a fury unmatched by any species, and a relentless will that could not be broken. But what disturbed the scholars the most was the realization that the enemy described in these texts was not some forgotten race wiped out in the war. The enemy still existed. The enemy walked among them. The enemy was humanity. Panic spread among the scholars as they pieced together the fragments of history. The war had been so devastating that the victors had done something unheard of. They had erased all records of it. They had not only destroyed entire fleets and planets, but they had wiped out every mention of the conflict, ensuring that the truth would never be spoken again. The species that had once threatened the entire galaxy had been pacified, their memories suppressed, their nature buried beneath layers of false history. Humanity had not lost its strength. It had been made to forget. And now, they lived unaware of what they had once been, believing themselves to be a race of peace, of reason, of cooperation. The truth had been hidden so well that even humans no longer knew it. But history had a way of revealing itself when it was least expected. As the scholars dug deeper, they found records that hinted at something even more alarming. There were signs that humanity's forgotten nature was not gone, merely dormant. There were stories of humans who had survived conditions that no other species could endure, of warriors who had fought against overwhelming odds and emerged victorious. There were tales of soldiers who had continued to fight even when they had lost everything, refusing to surrender even in the face of death. The evidence was scattered, hidden in myths and legends, but it was there. Humanity's true nature was only asleep, and if it ever woke up, the galaxy would never be the same again. The Sci-Fi Council debated for days about what should be done. Some argued that the records should be destroyed, that no one should ever learn the truth. If humanity remained unaware of its past, then perhaps the peace would continue. But others feared that the truth was already beginning to surface. If humans rediscovered their own history on their own, there would be no way to control what happened next. The council could not agree, and in the end, the decision was taken out of their hands, because someone else had already learned the truth. The records had been stolen. Somewhere in the vastness of space, someone had taken the forbidden knowledge and vanished. The council did not know if it was a rogue human, an ambitious alien empire, or something even worse. All they knew was that the past was no longer forgotten. The secret had been set free, and for the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy had reason to fear. Because if humanity ever remembered what it truly was, then nothing in the universe could stop them. Nothing. The stolen records spread faster than anyone had expected. In the dark corners of the galaxy, where shadows whispered secrets and unseen forces moved the pieces of fate, the truth about humanity was no longer a forgotten legend. The knowledge traveled from hand to hand, reaching those who sought power, those who feared the unknown, and those who simply wanted to understand the mystery of the past. The Seltheri, who had discovered the ancient archives, were no longer the sole keepers of this dangerous secret. Someone, perhaps a rogue trader, a desperate scientist, or a hidden force, had made sure that humanity's past would not remain buried. And now, whispers filled the air of distant worlds, rumors spreading like wildfire about a species that had once ruled the battlefield, a race that had been tamed by deception, but still carried the embers of their former might deep within them. At first, no one took the stories seriously. The idea that the quiet, cooperative, and seemingly fragile humans could have ever been warlords of the stars was laughable. The galactic community had long seen them as resourceful but harmless, intelligent but weak. They were traders, diplomats, and explorers, not warriors. But then the first reports surfaced. An attack on a distant mining colony had left a group of humans stranded with no hope of rescue, surrounded by merciless invaders who expected an easy victory. The battle should have lasted minutes, yet when the rescuers finally arrived, they did not find broken survivors or surrendering prisoners. Instead, they found something else. The attackers were dead, their weapons turned against them, their bodies left scattered like discarded shells. The humans, outnumbered and under-equipped, had fought as if they had nothing to lose. Their injuries were severe, their exhaustion clear, but in their eyes there was something chilling. A fire, a hunger for battle that should not have existed in a species that claimed to know only peace. The stories only grew from there. Reports of humans enduring injuries that should have been fatal, of soldiers who refused to retreat even when logic dictated surrender, of warriors who fought with a level of strategy and ferocity that no one had ever expected. Governments dismissed it as exaggeration, as isolated incidents, but those who paid attention knew better. This was not coincidence. This was not luck. Something was waking up inside humanity. The past was not just a myth. It was a reality that had been suppressed, hidden beneath layers of false history. The war instincts, the survival strategies, the unbreakable determination. It had all been there, buried but not destroyed. And now, with the right conditions, it was returning. The High Council of the Galactic Union, a collection of the most powerful species in the known universe, convened in secret to discuss what had become an undeniable truth. Humanity was changing. They had lived under the illusion that humans were a peaceful species, but the records from the lost archives painted a different picture. Thousands of years ago, humans had waged wars that reshaped the stars. They had conquered enemies that should have been undefeatable. Their willpower had driven them to expand beyond their limits, to fight even when victory seemed impossible. The only reason the galaxy had survived their rise was because an alliance of civilizations had found a way to erase their history, to strip them of their own knowledge, turning them into what they were today, a species without a past. But now, that past was creeping back into reality, and no one knew what would happen next. Among those most troubled by this revelation were the Vrakthar, a warlike species that had long believed themselves to be the greatest warriors in the galaxy. For centuries, they had seen humans as amusing but weak, a species that lacked the raw strength and brutality needed to survive in true battle. But when they tested humans in combat, they found something terrifying. Humans did not fight like other species. They did not rely on pure physical strength, nor did they break under pressure. Instead, they adapted. They learned. They endured. A Vrakthar warlord, after losing a battle to a human mercenary, said only one thing before retreating. They are remembering. The galaxy watched in uncertainty as more incidents piled up. A human soldier on a distant battlefield survived wounds that should have killed him. A human pilot outmaneuvered an entire enemy squadron using tactics that had not been seen in recorded history. A group of human prisoners overthrew their captors and turned the war in their favor. It was becoming clear that something was happening on a scale no one had predicted. The genetic memory, the instincts of war that had been locked away, were resurfacing. Humanity was not evolving into something new. They were returning to what they had always been. The leaders of the Galactic Union debated their next move. Some believed that humanity had to be contained before it was too late. If they regained full knowledge of their past, they could once again become the dominant force in the universe. Others argued that it was already too late, that humanity's awakening was not something that could be stopped. And there were those who suggested a more terrifying possibility. What if humanity already knew? What if, beneath their peaceful exterior, they had always remembered, waiting for the right moment to reclaim their place in the galaxy? The uncertainty filled the air with unease, and the question that no one dared to ask lingered in the minds of every leader, every general, every observer. Had the gods of war already awakened? In the darkness of space, on a hidden world long abandoned by civilization, an ancient structure came to life. Deep beneath the surface, machines that had been silent for thousands of years activated, responding to a presence they had been waiting for. A lone human stood before the glowing console, their fingers trembling as they reached out to touch the device. The symbols on the screen were unfamiliar, yet something in their mind understood them. The forgotten language of war, the lost history of their ancestors, the legacy that had been taken from them, it was all here. And as the words appeared before their eyes, a single realization formed in their mind. We were never weak. We were never meant to forget. And now, we will rise again. For centuries, the Galactic Union had maintained an illusion of peace, a fragile balance upheld by treaties, politics, and fear. The great empires of the universe had agreed upon a silent rule. No war should ever be allowed to disrupt the control they held over the weaker civilizations. Conflicts were resolved in meetings, battles fought only on economic and diplomatic fronts. The era of conquest had ended long ago. At least, that was what the rulers wanted to believe. But beneath the surface, beneath the carefully crafted words of unity, there were those who waited for the moment when everything would fall apart. And that moment had finally arrived. It started on a small colony world, insignificant in the grand scale of the universe. Arden Prime was nothing more than a resource outpost, home to a handful of settlers and miners who lived simple lives, never expecting to become part of history. But when the fleet of the Krell Dominion descended upon the planet, everything changed. The Krell were not interested in negotiations. They did not warn before attacking. They came like a storm, overwhelming the planetary defenses in a matter of hours. The Galactic Union had signed a treaty forbidding such invasions, yet here it was, a direct act of war, and no one came to stop it. The settlers, unarmed and outnumbered, had no hope of survival. Surrender was the only option, or so it seemed. The Krell expected the humans to fall in line as others had before them, to accept their fate as captives or corpses. But the first sign of resistance came from a mining facility on the outskirts. When Krell soldiers entered to secure the area, they were met not with terrified workers, but with an ambush. The miners, men and women who had never worn military uniforms, fought back with whatever they had: plasma drills, excavation explosives, and sheer determination. They were outgunned, their weapons crude compared to the advanced rifles of the Krell, but they had something the invaders did not expect: a refusal to break. News of the resistance spread across the planet, and what should have been an easy conquest turned into something far worse. The humans did not surrender. They adapted. Small groups formed, launching attacks from the shadows, striking the enemy where they were weakest. Supplies were stolen, weapons repurposed, tactics evolved. The Krell commander, enraged at the losses, ordered harsher measures: public executions, destruction of settlements, complete annihilation of any resistance. But rather than crush the spirit of the humans, it only ignited something far more dangerous. The attacks became more precise, more coordinated, and then something truly terrifying happened. The humans started winning. The Galactic Union could no longer ignore the situation. Officially, they condemned the Krell for violating the treaty, but behind closed doors, they were more afraid of what was happening on Arden Prime. This was not just an isolated battle. This was proof of something they had feared for a long time, that humanity had not lost their ability to fight. They had been controlled, manipulated into a peaceful existence, made to forget the true nature of their past. But the truth could never be erased completely. The spark of war, buried for so long, had finally been reignited. And once a fire had started, it could not be stopped so easily. Reinforcements were sent to end the conflict, but the war had already taken a new shape. The resistance had spread beyond Ardent Prime. Across the galaxy, humans on other colonies, those who had once lived under the illusion of safety, began to rise up. They did not wait for the Galactic Union to defend them, nor did they trust the promises of those who had betrayed them before. They took their fate into their own hands. Mercenaries, smugglers, former soldiers, each of them found their way to the battlefield, driven not by orders, but by something deeper, the instinct to fight back. The Krell Dominion, which had once prided itself as an unstoppable force, now faced something they could not understand. Their enemies were not fighting for territory or resources. They were fighting for survival. They did not break under pressure. They did not surrender when logic dictated they should. They fought with a ferocity that could not be matched, and worst of all, they learned. Each battle made them stronger. Each loss only fueled their determination. The Krell had set fire to something ancient, something no civilization had been prepared to deal with. As the war escalated, the Galactic Union was forced to make a decision. Would they stand with the humans, acknowledging that they had been wrong to suppress them for so long, or would they turn against them, fearing that if humanity regained its full strength, no force in the galaxy would be able to stop them? The choice was not easy, and in the highest halls of power, debates rage. But for those fighting on the front lines, there was no time for politics. The only thing that mattered was survival. And so, as the war spread to new worlds, as more humans awakened to the truth of their own nature, the galaxy watched in horror. The age of peace was over. The illusion had been shattered. The war that had been avoided for centuries had finally begun. And at the heart of it all, at the center of the growing storm, stood the one species no one had expected to rise. Humanity was at war again. And this time, they would not be stopped. The galaxy had forgotten. It had been too long since the last true war. Too many centuries since the old empires had fought for survival rather than power. The Galactic Union had built a system designed to prevent war at all costs. Treaties, negotiations, and political control kept conflicts from escalating beyond minor skirmishes. The younger races had been conditioned to believe that violence was primitive, that diplomacy was the future, that history had moved beyond the days of conquest. But there was one race in the stars that had not truly forgotten. Not completely. Humanity had been forced into peace, controlled by laws that kept them from embracing what they truly were. They had been monitored, manipulated, and restricted, their history rewritten to turn their ancient wars into nothing more than cautionary tales. They were told that their past was a shameful thing, that their old instincts were dangerous, that they were better off without them. For a time, it worked. Humans became traders, explorers, diplomats. They spread across the stars as builders, not conquerors. But then, Ardent Prime happened. The Krell Dominion's invasion had not only shattered a single colony, it had shattered the illusion that had been placed over humanity for generations. The resistance on Ardent Prime had been the first spark, but the fire had spread across the stars. Every human colony, every settlement, every outpost that had once accepted the peace of the Galactic Union now saw the truth. There was no safety in submission. There was no security in trusting the Union to protect them. If they wanted to survive, they would have to fight for it themselves, and so they did. But what began as scattered resistance soon turned into something far greater. The battles were no longer just about survival. The galaxy had made a mistake. It had reminded humans who they truly were. The ancient instincts buried deep within their blood had resurfaced. The tactical minds, the warrior spirit, the relentless drive to win. Everything that had once made them the most feared species in the stars had awakened once more. And when humans fought, they did not fight to reclaim what was lost. They fought to conquer. The Krell Dominion, once a proud and brutal force, now found itself on the defensive. Every attempt to retaliate only fueled the human war machine. The more pressure the Krell applied, the stronger the humans became. Their technology advanced at a terrifying speed. Their strategies adapted faster than any enemy could anticipate. For every battle the Krell won, the humans returned with 100 more victories. Then came the moment that changed everything. A fleet of Krell warships launched a final desperate strike against a human-controlled world, expecting an easy victory. But when they arrived, they found the planet already prepared, defenses unlike anything they had ever seen. The humans had built weapons and strategies beyond anything the galaxy had considered possible. The Krell fleet was wiped out within hours. No survivors, no escape. It was not just a defeat, it was a massacre. The message was clear. Humanity had not only returned to war, they had mastered it once again. Panic spread through the Galactic Union. The old empires who had once pitied humanity now feared them. The same governments that had once restrained them now scrambled to negotiate, to make peace before the war reached their own borders. But it was too late. The humans had learned the truth. Peace had only ever been an illusion forced upon them. And now, they were done pretending. World after world fell, not just to human weapons, but to the sheer power of their presence. Armies surrendered before battles even began. Entire planets defected to their side, not out of fear, but out of something far deeper. The legend of humanity had returned, the race that never surrendered, the warriors that could not be broken. The forgotten war gods had awakened once more, and the galaxy could do nothing but watch as their fate was rewritten. There was no stopping them now. There was no force in the universe that could put them back in chains. The last war had begun. And this time, humanity would not be forgotten. This time, they would rule. The war had ended, but the echoes of its destruction still lingered across the stars. Entire civilizations had fallen, once mighty empires now reduced to scattered remnants struggling to rebuild. The Galactic Union, which had once prided itself as the supreme governing body of the cosmos, was nothing more than a hollow name, its influence shattered beyond repair. The old order was gone, and in its place stood a new power, humanity. No one had expected it. When the first human fleets had risen against the Krell Dominion, the galaxy had watched with curiosity, believing it to be just another rebellion that would be crushed in due time. But it hadn't been just a rebellion. It had been an awakening. The humans had fought not just to survive, but to dominate. And when they fought with a purpose unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. They adapted, they learned, and they retaliated with a ferocity that turned battlefields into graveyards. No enemy had been prepared for the sheer brutality of human warfare, for the relentless advance of their fleets, for the terrifying efficiency of their tactics. The Krell had been the first to fall. Their mighty war machine, once feared by all, had been dismantled piece by piece, their armies scattered, their homeworld left defenseless as human warships surrounded it. Their surrender had been inevitable, but surrender had not saved them. The galaxy had thought humanity would show mercy, that they would seek peace once they had won. But the humans had not forgotten. They remembered every massacre, every colony burned, every innocent life lost. And so, they had done what no other species had dared to do before. The Krell Dominion had not just been defeated, it had been erased. Their leaders were executed, their warriors hunted down, their legacy wiped from history, as if they had never existed. The rest of the galaxy had watched in horror, realizing too late what they had unleashed. The Union had once sought to control humanity, to shake them into something weak and obedient. But their control had only delayed the inevitable. The war had reawakened what had been dormant for too long, the ancient instincts, the warrior spirit, the unstoppable force that was humanity at war. One by one, The other empires had surrendered, not because they had no choice, but because they understood the truth. There was no victory against the humans. There was no bargaining, no negotiations that would change what was coming. The galaxy belonged to them now. It had been a swift conquest, not through sheer destruction, but through something far more powerful: fear. The human fleets had left countless planets untouched, not out of mercy, but because they knew they didn't need to conquer through violence. The mere sight of their warships in the skies was enough to break the will of entire civilizations. Governments chose to submit before a single shot was fired. The legend of humanity spread faster than their fleets, a whisper that turned into an undeniable reality. They were no longer just another race among the stars. They were the new rulers of the galaxy. The old laws were rewritten. The weak empires that had once dictated the rules of the universe were now subjects under human control. The territories that had once been divided among the great powers were now unified under a single banner. The galaxy, once a chaotic web of alliances and betrayals, had been forged into order by the only race strong enough to wield it. There was no more union, no more fragile peace built on lies. There was only the human dominion, and it would last forever. But even in their victory, humanity had not forgotten the cost of their rise. The destruction, the countless lives lost, the horrors of war, these things would not be buried. They would serve as a warning. The galaxy had learned its lesson, and it would never forget. War would never again be forced upon humanity. No empire would dare challenge them. No rebellion would rise against them. For the first time in history, the stars were at peace, not because of treaties or negotiations, but because the one race capable of enforcing peace now ruled over all. The galaxy had changed forever.